we really don't have to be hostile or aggressive or antisocial when we're being critical. In fact, criticism will be more readily absorbed if the person we're criticizing knows on some level that we are interested in their well-being. I've personally had great luck and great success criticizing people from a place of love in a gentle way that makes it clear that they need to do something different, but that it's not a matter of them losing my support. If anything, they have even more of my support since I've identified something they need help with. There are two main places this comes to be relevant, and a third one that's in development now. The first is my official career in anesthesiology. I'm a professor, so I train future anesthesiologists. I work with anesthesiologists in training, and I give them different levels or degrees of autonomy and authority over the care of our patients. And I let them make some mistakes, as long as they're benign and recoverable. I'm there to adjust and course correct and save the situation if it gets to be at all dangerous for the patient. And this process takes a little longer than it would if it was just me doing it, for instance. Except for the case where I can supervise multiple people, this can also make up for the inefficiencies to some degree. But for the purpose of this presentation, the key element to focus on is that I was in their shoes 10 years ago. And I remember being very turned off by my supervisors when they would make a big deal out of nothing. There would be no emergency, no crisis, but I made some mistake or something they would have preferred me to do differently, and they would abuse their power. And this is not uncommon. You see it in medicine, you see it in banking, you see it in law, you see it in the military. But the pendulum is swinging, and this program is part of my contribution to the swinging of that pendulum. Because like I said, we do not have to be abusive, antisocial, hostile, and aggressive when being critical. When we do that, the only thing keeping our audience engaged is fear. Is the fear that if they don't listen to us, that we will have the power to punish them, to reprimand them, and to give them negative reviews, etc. A much more effective way to keep someone's engagement is to make sure they know that I'm on their side, and that my correction of them, my criticism of them, my guidance is, one, in their best interest, two, correct. That then they wouldn't want me to be quiet. They wouldn't want me to pretend they're doing the right thing when they're doing the wrong thing, in order to simply protect their feelings and prevent their feelings from being hurt. The good news is people who go into medicine have already self-selected to some degree, and they are relatively tough people who welcome criticism and welcome feedback, and that helps. It makes my job in this regard a little bit easier, but it's still not infinite. Their tolerance for criticism and for correction. So I've found it very helpful to be mindful of the tone I take, their body language, and take into account whether they're in a place to take feedback, take criticism, and all that. So the second place this has applied, but is going to apply even more in my life, is parenting. And I'm very, very interested to discover and report back on how this applies to giving my daughters correction when I perceive them doing something wrong. And I'm lucky that I have a spouse who is relatively intuitively strong in this regard when it comes to not being a people pleaser, not being a pushover, and being comfortable giving people she loves correction and direction. Because, of course, a codependent parent is going to have a hard time disciplining their children, which is then going to come back and bite the child in the ass, which will also then end up being a cost that the parent pays when the child turns back around and asks, why didn't you give me boundaries? Why didn't you give me discipline? Why did you just let me run wild? So think about that. When you have advice to give someone, consider giving it handle first, which means that you give it as an offering rather than as something that you oppress them with. The alternative is to give it blade first. And of course, when you give something blade first, because you're holding the handle, it's going to be harder for the recipient to handle it. So if you've ever given advice and found that it was hard for someone to receive it, and you were frustrated because you had the best intentions and you know you were right, consider that it was hard for them to handle, hard for them to receive, because perhaps you were giving it blade first. And while it could have been a very helpful, useful tool, you were giving them the knife, the dagger, the machete. When you give it blade first, that in some ways defeats the purpose when it makes them defensive and insecure and unreceptive.